Okay, guys, our focus of discussion is establishing test validity and reliability. I will focus in your case on the statistical analysis of this. But first of all, I would want you to understand why we are doing test validity and reliability. So, di ba on the previous lessons, we are dealing on how to create an exam, how to write a multiple choice exam, how to write an identification type of exam. On this topic, our focus is how can we able to assure that the exam that we are giving our students are indeed valid and reliable. So that's why we are conducting your reliability test. And then we also have the steps for validity to ensure that the test that we are giving our students will be valid and reliable. So gone are the days na kasi class na gagawa ka lang ng exam tapos okay na. No? So right now, we are always looking into the validity and reliability of the measures so that we will be able to ensure that indeed the examinations are valid and it serves its purpose. So hindi pwede, for example, Ella, kapag nag-teach ka later on, sasabihin mo na, ay, okay, may exam na ako sa ganitong subject, okay na. After the exams, we should be able to check again for the validity and reliability. So we are doing the process before and after. Okay, our examinations are being done. Now, one of the things here that we need to remember is that reliability is the consistency of the response to measure under the following conditions. But the key word here is the word consistency. Okay? Pag sinabi natin consistency, di ba consistent, ibig sabihin kahit over time, the same yung responses. Ganito kasi yun, guys. When I say that an exam is reliable, for example, I will give the exam today. I gave you a 10-item exam in mathematics. If you got a perfect score in that exam, kung reliable yung exam, kahit next week mo kunin yung exam, perfect pa rin yung score mo. Kung hindi man perfect, siguro one mistake yung score mo. That way, we can say that the exam yields consistent results. Okay, again, that way, we can say that the exam yields consistent results. That example that I have given you is what we refer to as your test-retest reliability. Okay, that's what we refer to as your test-retest reliability. So, ang pinaka-common na reliability testing na ginagawa natin among our examinations is what we refer to as your test-retest reliability. And again, when I say test-retest, look at the name, test-retest. Ibig sabihin, nag-test ka ngayon, magre-retest ka or mag-test ka again. In other words, test now, test again. Kaya nga, test, retest. So anong ginagawa natin? Kapag titignan ko class yung diagram okay, that I have illustrated here, you can see, that the students took the test for the first time, and then maybe after 30 minutes or 6 months, depending on the type of exam that you would want to pursue on, the test can be retaken again by the same student. And then, for us to say that the result is indeed reliable, dapat yung scores niya is consistent. Dapat yung scores na pinapakita ng estudyante natin is consistent. Okay? That way, class, we will be able to say that our students is having consistent exams and then our exams are also reliable. And para class malaman natin itong reliability na tinatawag natin, may kinakonduct tayong test, and one example of that test is your Pearson's R. Okay? The statistical test that we are using in order to determine whether the test is reliable or not is your Pearson's R. Pearson's R is used for your test-retest reliability. Again, class, your Pearson's R is used for your test-retest reliability. And your Pearson's R could be computed using several softwares. And one of the softwares available to us is what you refer to as your SPSS. Okay, I don't know kung na-meet nyo na si SPSS nung senior high tayo. Pero class, SPSS is a very common software. So you have your statistical package for social sciences. That's the meaning of SPSS. As by the time of this lecture, there is already version 28 of your SPSS, which was released last 2022 by IBM. So IBM is the company that creates your SPSS and develops your SPSS. So class, pag titingnan natin yung SPSS, SPSS is a software wherein you will just encode the data there from your students, and then from that data taken from your students, you are already able to you are able to determine if the test is reliable, you are able to perform tests for differences, and you're also able to perform test for relationship. Now, ang nakikita po natin sa screen is a typical example of an SPSS table for correlations. Okay? Pag sinabi kong SPSS table, ibig sabihin class, by the time that I will encode the data, tapos nag-run ako ng statistical test, yan po yung lalabas na table, yan po yung results ng table natin sa SPSS. Okay? Tulad po ng nandyan sa screen ninyo. Except dun sa mga red marks, wala yan sa SPSS. Now, if you would look at the table here, plus the table is showing a relationship between the variable height and then the variable weight. Okay? This one is a test for the relationship of the variable height and the variable weight. So dapat marunong kayong mag-interpret ng table. I will be assessing whether you understand this or not. So, makikita natin sa example, height is here, and then weight is here. So class, ibig sabihin, the value that we will be looking to is in these cells. So we are looking in these values. Kung manonotice nyo, hindi ko napapansinin ang mga values na nandito sa box na to because basically that is height versus height. Okay? So height versus height, ibig sabihin height to self. Okay, so it does not matter. So what's important is the relationship between the height and the weight. Now class, pag titingnan yung relationship between sa height and the weight, we can be able to see that the Pearson correlation is 0.513. We can be able to see that the Pearson correlation again is 0.513. Ano po ngayon kung 0.513 yung Pearson correlation natin? Class, if the Pearson correlation is 0.513, we can interpret the value of that. And based on this interpretation, sige, tingnan nyo yung interpretation ng values. Ngayon, the value that I've given you is 0.513. Anong uri po siya ng relationship? Will it be negligible, weak, substantial, strong, or very strong?
Substantial, sir.
Substantial, sir.
Tama, no? Tama. So, based on that class, I will be able to say that, okay, it's a substantial relationship. Now, class, anong ibig sabihin ng substantial relationship? And since, class, we are interpreting Pearson's R, we also need to say that it is a positive relationship. So, sabihin natin, positive substantial relationship. Okay? It's a positive substantial relationship. Ano pong ibig sabihin kapag positive substantial relationship? Ibig sabihin lang naman, class, is that once the height of the person increases, the weight of the person also increases. Okay? Once the height of the person increases, the weight of the person also increases. And another value here that is more important for us to look into is what we refer to as your p-value. So if you can recall, class, no, statistics din na to. So class, p-value po yung tawag ng value na makikita natin under the Pearson's R. Okay? So class, when I talk about p-value, in a while I want to type. So class, if I talk about the p-value, class, your p-value is the basis whether the test is significant or not. Okay? Ano pong ibig sabihin? Kapag ang p-value po natin is less than the set level of significance, yan po yung tinatawag nating alpha level. Okay? Plus, if the p-value is less than the alpha level, the test is considered to be significant. Okay, the test is considered to be significant. Define muna natin kung ano yung alpha level. Plus, your alpha level is your set level of significance. Okay, it's your set level of significance. In studies class, it is usually set at 0.05 kapag social studies, 0.01 if kapag health studies, at saka pharmaceutical studies, and then you even have 0.10 okay, kapag mga studies that are 0.10 are for studies in which some margin of error is tolerable. Bakit po margin of error? Kasi 0.05 is 5% error, 0.01 is 1% error, and 0.1 here is 10% error. So the very common ones used is your 0.005 in social sciences. But in this case, class, sa nakikita natin, the set level of significance for this one is 0.01. Again, the set level of significance for this one is 0.01. Now class, alamin natin. Tingnan natin. Sabi ko sa inyo kanina, the test is considered significant if the p-value is less than the alpha level. Again, the test is considered significant if the p-value is less than the alpha level. Now, ngayon, tingnan nyo. Okay? Ngayon, tingnan natin. Class, the p-value here is 0.00. What can we conclude if I will compare it to the alpha level of 0.01? Is it significant or not significant?
Significant.
Okay? Paano natin nasabi na significant siya? Paano natin masabi na significant siya?
Since less than siya sir, sa alpha level or set level, significant.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay? So I hope others were able to capture that. So class, no, the p-value is less than. It's less than the alpha level of 0.01. And for that, we can conclude that this test is significant. Eh sir, ano ngayon kung significant? Class, since it's significant, we can say that the relationship is not because of error. The relationship is not because of error. Okay? Tandaan nyo, ha? Tandaan nyo, ganun siya mag-interpret. Okay, so we will encounter more tables of this as we go along in the statistics. So I hope that you are able to understand. Okay? Now, tingnan naman natin itong isang to. Okay? Class, if you can notice, the correlation is 0.094. So kapag 0.094 siya, how would I interpret it based on this? How would I interpret it based on this? Sige.
Very strong relationship, sir.
Again, sorry.
Charot lang gali, sir. Negligible gali, sir.
Na-confuse ka na, na-confuse. Sige. Thank you for that, Ashnor. How about others? Sige nga, Pearl, kapag ikaw yung titingin, it's 0.094. 0.094. What do you think? What type of relationship is it? Yes, Pearl.
Negligible, sir.
Okay, it's negligible, no? It's negligible. And, no, kita nyo kanina, anong tawag, the misinterpretation there by Ashnor is understandable, ha? So kung kaya, it's a reminder na dapat mag-ingat kayo sa decimal point because it says 0.094. Okay, so it's negligible because it belongs in this category. May zero kasi, no? May zero before. Kala mo, Ashnor, 94. Okay, so it's okay, ha? It's understandable. So it happens. So that's why be careful with that. Now, if I would go back to this table, it's a negligible relationship. But if I would assess using the p-value, is it significant or not significant? Sige, pag titingnan ko yung p-value, significant siya or not significant? Sige nga, Maika, what do you think?
Significant, sir.
Paano mo nasabi na significant siya, Maika?
Because the alpha level is less than the p-value, sir.
Baka baliktad. Again.
Because the p-value is less than the alpha level.
Okay, so in that case, tama, no? So it's because the p-value, which is still 0.00, it's less than the set alpha level of 0.01. So for that, we can consider that it's significant. Okay? In other words, statistically, hindi natin siya pwedeng sabihin na ay negligible yung relationship, hayaan mo. That negligible relationship is significant. So it means that it has some bearing. Okay? Now, that is if we're talking about statistics. But since we are talking about assessment in learning, class, for the assessment in learning, what we are after for is that there should be a positive correlation between our test-retest. So ibig sabihin class, dalawang scores, no? Dalawang scores yung titingnan ko. Yung scores sa test at saka yung scores sa retest. Once I will run the statistical analysis for these scores, dapat class positive yung relationship nila. Which would indicate that there is a consistency in the way that the students took the test. Okay? And in that way that the scores of the student are consistent and not only influenced by any other external factors. So yan po yung habol natin when it comes to your test. No? Okay. Now, another thing. So, plus another thing is that we also do the test for internal consistency. At kapag sinabi kong test for internal consistency, one of the tests there that is being done is your Cronbach alpha. Okay? Ang isa pong test na ginagawa natin is the Cronbach alpha. When I talk about your Cronbach alpha class, it would be able to evaluate whether the responses of the students are consistent from the first item going towards the last item. Okay? So titingnan niya, consistent nga ba? Consistent nga ba na alam niya yung concept na to? Or consistent nga ba na nagdi-disagree siya on this concept? Okay? That's your Cronbach alpha. Kanina yung Pearson R, magko-compare siya ng dalawang test, no? Or dalawang pag-take ng test. Pero si Cronbach alpha is able to determine the internal consistency. Ibig sabihin, inside the questionnaire or in one question, are the responses consistent? Okay? In one question, are the in one questionnaire, no? In one questionnaire, are the responses consistent? Okay? So titingnan niyang ganon. So class, the Cronbach alpha needs to have a value of 0.6 according to the reference text of Balagtas. But then, I would like to make an addendum or I would want to make an insertion on that. Based on most of the references, 0.70 po yung cutoff na binibigay sa Cronbach alpha. Okay? So with that, we will stick with the Cronbach alpha of 0.07. Later on for the board examinations, in case class na i-review nyo yung concept, just check kung ano yung sinasabi ng latest references. Okay? But as of this time, as far as I visited references, it's 0.70. Okay? Which would mean that the test is suitable for standard testing. Okay? Ibig sabihin, pwede mo siyang gamitin for your exams. No? Okay? Yan po yung ibig sabihin ng Cronbach alpha of 0.7 and above. Okay? So again, the Cronbach alpha value needs to be 0.70 and above. Ibig sabihin, kasabay ang value ng 0.70. Now, as I have mentioned also, no, hindi na po kasi uso na magko-compute ka nito manually. Kaya dati-rati manual, ginagawa mo yan manually, magma-minus ka, magpa-plus, at saka mamahahabang formula. Katulad nitong formula na to, no? As in, it is being done manually. You would be doing it manually. But in this case, since we already have softwares, okay, we acknowledge the purpose of our softwares, and instead, we will be geared towards interpreting the results from these softwares. So class, yan po yung kinalalabasan ng screen sa SPSS matapos yung Cronbach alpha. Okay? Now, look at this result. Look at the result on the screen. Pag titingnan ko class yung Cronbach alpha dyan, what can you say? Can I use the exam for standard testing or need ko pang i-revise yung questionnaire ko? Based on the Cronbach alpha result that you can see on the screen, do I need to revise my exam or okay na siya for standard testing? Your thoughts? Sige na, tingnan nyo kung saan yung Cronbach alpha value dyan sa screen. It's here. No? Now, based on that result, the result is 0.905. Do I need to revise my test or can I use my test for standard testing? Sige na. Ella, can you give me a response on that?
Yes, sir.
Anong yes? Pwede na siya sa standard
Pwede na siya,
testing?
sir. Pwede na po siya.
Sige, sige. Let's ask Erwin. Erwin, can I use this in standard testing or do I need to revise?
Pwede na, sir. Pwede na siya, sir.
Okay, so class, with the result of 0.905, we can already use the questionnaire for standard testing. Okay? So this is an example of the screen that you can see in SPSS. And as you can see, there are a lot of values there. And I'm trying to point out to you what's the value of your most concern. Okay, so we are most concerned here of the value of Cronbach alpha 0.905 in a 12-item examination. Okay, so I hope that you will be able to interpret values like that. Then, let's talk about test validity. Class, when I say test validity, the test is considered valid when it measures what it intends to measure. So meaning class, pag test sa science, valid siya kapag yung items mo about science. Kapag ang questions mo is about algebraic equations, it's considered valid if ang mga questions mo are about algebraic expressions. Okay? If it measures what it's supposed to measure. And there are very different ways, class, to establish various different ways to establish test validity. Isa po dyan is ang tinatawag nating content validity. Pag sinabi ko pong content validity, titingnan yung content ng exam when the items represent the domain or the topic being measured. So ano pong ginagawa sa content validity? Class, pinapacheck sa isang reviewer. We are doing your reviewer checking. Okay? Halimbawa, gagawa ng exam si Maika. Okay? Gagawa ng exam si Maika. Tapos si Maika ipapakita niya kay Rochelle. Sasabihin niya, Rochelle, can you check for the content validity of my exam? Okay? Given na si Maika at saka si Rochelle almost the same level of expertise or mas expert si Rochelle kaysa sa kanya. Halimbawa, Maika, si Rochelle, senior teacher natin doon sa science or baka master teacher 2 na siya sa science. Tapos ikaw, Rochelle, master teacher 1. So sabihin mo, Rochelle, can I have it checked whether this exam is valid or not? Okay, that's your content validity. Now, doon naman sa face validity class, face, when the test is presented well, free of errors, and administered well. Okay? Now, class, pag sinabi natin face validity, as in the face value of the exam or the questionnaire that you have, ano pong ibig sabihin mo, sir, na face value? So, how is it done? It is tried to a small group of respondents. So, halimbawa, gagawa ng exam si Pearl. Tapos sasabihin ni Pearl, okay, instead of giving this first to 10 sections that I handle, I will first try to 10 students. Susubukan ko munang i-administer yung exam sa 10 students or hindi kaya sa isang section. Para makikita ko kapag they understood the instructions, were they able to understand the exam, may mga questions ba akong hindi naiintindihan, may mga questions ba akong pangit. Pangit yung pagka-structure ng grammar. Okay? So that's the reason, class, kung bakit natin siya pinapa-face validity. Kumbaga, when I talk about face validity, it's like a dry run. It's like a trial run para masubukan natin whether it will be effective or not. Now, predictive validity naman. Pag sinabi nating predictive validity, it talks about a measure that can predict a future criterion. Okay? So class, pag sinabi nating predictive validity, a very good example here is the entrance exam. For me to say that the entrance exam is valid, dapat yung mga nakapasa sa entrance exam ko are able to perform well in the academe. Or halimbawa, yung mga top-notcher ko sa entrance exam, dapat mataas din yung performance sa isang semester. But try this, no? Try this example. For example, class, yung top 10 mo sa entrance exam, lahat sila bagsak sa isang semester. Meaning, there might be a problem with the entrance exam. Meaning, the entrance exam might not be valid. Baka nag-top sila kasi iba yung mini-measure. Baka naging top-notcher sila sa math exam kasi yung mini-measure mo doon, values education, at saka ibang subject. Okay, so that's your predictive validity. Dapat it's a measure, should be able to predict a future criterion for that matter. And again, a very good example is your entrance exam. Next class is your construct validity. So class, on construct validity, ang tinitingnan naman natin is the components or the factors of the test. Okay, and these factors, class, should be strongly correlated. And if you would be asked, no, okay, kung paano po yan ginagawa, it's also by conducting your review with the experts, and congruent to that, gumagawa tayo ng reliability test. Example, your Cronbach alpha. Your cronbach alpha could also verify for construct validity. Now, concurrent validity. Pag sinabi natin concurrent, ibig sabihin may nagsasabay. May nagsasabay. Ibig sabihin class 2 or more measures are present for each examinee that measures the same characteristics. Okay? Ibig sabihin class, no? Ibig sabihin, kahit exam 1, exam 2, measure 1, measure 2 yung gamitin, the same yung results. Halimbawa, gagawa kami ni Pearl ng questionnaire sa anxiety. Tapos yung result namin lumalabas, high anxiety yung students. So class, maraming questionnaire sa anxiety eh. Halimbawa, i-compare namin ni Pearl yung result ng anxiety questionnaire namin sa ibang anxiety questionnaires. Dapat kahit anxiety questionnaire ni Pearl, anxiety questionnaire ni Micah, anxiety questionnaire man ni Jessie, dapat the same na high anxiety yung result kapag may concurrent validity yung instrument na ginagamit. Okay? Then another thing is your convergent and divergent validity. So class, pag sinabi nating convergent validity, it means that the components or the factors of the test are hypothesized to have a positive correlation. Yan po yung convergent validity. Pag divergent validity naman, it's hypothesized to have a negative correlation. Okay? So again, kapag hypothesized na positive correlation, convergent validity. Kapag hypothesized na negative correlation, divergent validity yung ginagamit natin. Okay. Now students, another thing that we need to remember is the difficulty index, and then another one is the index of discrimination. There is actually a formula that determines the difficulty index and then the index of discrimination. But in this case, I just would want you to recall the interpretation. Okay? So class, gusto kong ma-memorize nyo itong interpretation ha. So halimbawa, pag sinabi ko na yung isang exam or isang item sa exam may difficulty index na 0.6, you understand that that is an average item. Kapag ang difficulty index niya is 0.019, that's a difficult item. Okay? So class, no? Hindi po kasi natin sinasabi na ang exam natin is easy or difficult by just simply looking at the exam. We need to measure its difficulty index based on the scores of the students. And class, paano po natin na malalaman na yung difficult po yung index ng exam na yan? Class, ginagawa ng statistical test is that it checks whether the answer of the student in that specific item is related to the total score of the students. Again, it checks whether the score by the student in that specific item is related to the entire score of the student. Okay? Diyan pumapasok si discrimination index naman natin. And class, for discrimination index, you have the following interpretation. Class, sa discrimination index natin, dapat po mag-revise tayo ng questionnaire or dapat i-revise natin class ang questions once the result is already at 0.10 to 0.9 and below. Okay? So again, we revise the results if the results is from 0.10, 0.9 and below. Ibig sabihin class, kapag dito po siya, kailangan po nating i-revise yung exam natin. Kailangan po nating i-revise ang specific item na yan because in other words, it might not be understood by the students, or in other words, hindi po siya nagme-measure effectively ng performance ng students natin. Okay? So kindly familiarize yourselves also with these values. I will be giving you assessment to assess whether you have memorized these values. Okay? Sir, paano po namin i-compute yan? Meron din pong formula for index of discrimination. And right now, there are already softwares that offer it. And one very good example perhaps is your learning management system. Okay? Plus your learning management system, such as for example in your Canvas is already able to detect for the discrimination index. Okay? Again, class, your Canvas is already able to detect for the discrimination index. Now, tingnan natin kung anong ibig kong sabihin ng discrimination index when it comes to your Canvas. So class, now, this is how the Canvas report would generate a certain type of quiz. And then class, on a certain type of quiz, tingnan nyo, okay, this question, from this question class, I'm able to know that, okay, 122, majority of my students got this question correct. And here is the discrimination index class. 0.25 yung discrimination index ng question na yan. So kapag babalik ako doon, students, if I will go back there to the analysis that we have, kapag the discrimination index is 0.25, it's a reasonably good item. Okay? This one has a discrimination index of 0.37, meaning class that is a good item. 0.34. Tingnan nyo itong isang ito. 0.22. The discrimination index is 0.22. Kapag titingnan ko siya sa standard natin based on balagtas, okay, pwede pa siyang maklasify as a reasonably good item. Pero nag-red na dito class because it indicates na medyo mababa na. Now, kung ako yung educator, nakita ko, mababa yung discrimination index. So anong gagawin ko class? I-review ko yung item. Okay? Is the item confusing or not? Pagkatapos nakikita ko na marami yung sumasagot nito. Whereas this is actually a wrong answer, no? So class, this is a wrong answer. So I need to review this one. What makes my students confused? Bakit yan po yung sinasagot nila? And if I will be using this test again, halimbawa next year, the same quiz yung gagamitin ko or gagamitin ko yung ibang items, I need to revise this item kasi mababa yung discrimination index niya. Okay? Just as an example although 0.22 is acceptable pa naman based on standards. Okay? Now, this one also, 0.09. Okay? Kung nakikita nyo class, tingnan nyo. If you will recall our lessons in making multiple choice items, recommended nga ba class na all of the choices are correct? Is it recommended for us to always use all of the above? Educators of the future, recommended nga ba na all of the above yung gagamitin natin? Sige na, I would want to hear your response. Is it recommended for us to use items that the answer is all of the above? Sige na. Sige. Maika, anong masasabi mo?
Can you please repeat the question, sir? Medyo na-confuse ako.
Sige. When I am making multiple choice exams, is it recommended to set the answers or make questions wherein yung sagot all of the above?
No, sir.
Okay? Hindi, di ba? Hindi. No? Hindi. Isa yan sa guideline natin. And if you would look at it, the discrimination index is very low. Okay? So that would give me a hint as an educator na, ay okay, mali, no? So dapat i-reduce ko yung items ko na may all of the above. Okay? So class, as you can see, this statistic is easily accessible in Canvas and in learning management systems. Kung kaya, you should be able to make use of these systems. So kung makikita natin, nakikita ko yung average score, 72%. High score may naka-perfect. Okay? So that would mean that maganda yung performance ng students. Sige. Any questions so far?